Hello, Ardmore, and welcome to The Jar. We just want to let you know that we are in our new location right here at the HFV Wilson Community Center.
Hey, you got it right. That's right.
I always get the letters mixed up. But we met for the very first time here at 4 o'clock on Sunday, this Sunday, and are continuing our study on John.
That's right.
And so now we are in John chapter 1, verses 35 through 51. And if you remember last week, if you are a non-believer or someone who's not yet a believer of Jesus, or you don't have a Bible of your own, remember that there is a really cool app called YouVersion.
Oh, yes.
It is the Bible app that you can download for free onto your phone and follow along with us. Today we're going to be primarily in what's called the ESV translation or version, but you can follow along in any translation with us today.
Matter of fact, we encourage it because you may see something in it with a different version than what we see that adds to what we're teaching to.
Absolutely. So, all right, so we're going to start in John chapter 1, verses 35 through 51. So just to set this up prior, the passage right before that basically talks about, we had talked about John the Baptist last time, and John the Baptist basically is approached by Jesus and claims Jesus as the Christ, as the Messiah, and they finally see each other face to face, and he recognizes Jesus for who he is. And so now we're going into the next verse, in verse 35, and it says, "The next day again John," which is John the Baptist, "was standing with two of his disciples, and he looked at Jesus as he walked by and said, 'Behold, the Lamb of God.' The two disciples heard him say this, and they followed Jesus, right? Because they trusted John the Baptist in that moment. Jesus turned, verse 38, Jesus turned and saw them following and said to them, 'What are you seeking?' And they said to him, 'Rabbi,' which means teacher, 'where are you staying?'" So I wanted to stop for a minute and just talk about that. That when they approach Jesus, Jesus is saying, what do you want? Basically, is what he's saying in this passage. And he's kind of just trying to figure out exactly what it is that they're asking him, right? And so I think the big thing for me that I got from that is, saying that Jesus exists, right? We know historically that he existed, or believing that he was real may not necessarily be enough, right? We must follow him for the right reasons. And to follow Jesus for our own purposes is asking the King to follow us, not the other way around.
Yeah, I love the way these disciples, they don't come and say, "Hey, Rabbi, come and teach us." They say, "Hey, Rabbi, we want to spend the whole day with you. We want to know what's going on." And I think that was an important test that they passed, because when Jesus says, "What are you seeking?" they could have answered a lot of different ways. We're seeking glory, we're seeking position, we're seeking title, we're seeking truth even. Mm-hmm. And they just said, "You know what? We just want to follow you around for the whole day." Right. And Jesus is like, "Come see."
Yeah, come figure it out.
Yeah.
So I guess my question for you all is, are you seeking his glory or yours? Mm-hmm. So if you're wanting to learn more about who this Jesus person was, right? Who Jesus is, or if you're already a believer and you know who Jesus is, are you getting to know him better because you want him to be magnified, or are you doing it because you want everybody to see you?
Well, that's good stuff, because it's really easy, even if you have good intentions, it's really easy to get caught up in the "what has Jesus done for me lately" kind of feel, and start thinking about, I know as a pastor, I struggle with this sometimes. I want to fall on Jesus when things are going bad, but when things are going well and people are getting in the church and they're getting excited and everything, to pat myself on the back and say, "Way to go, you got them all in here." Right. But really, honestly, we have to be following Jesus for his sake, right, and not just for ours. Right. And that's powerful.
And remembering that he is the King. We don't go, if you've watched any movies of kings and soldiers, right? The soldier's not going to go to the king and ask the king to follow him and align with him. Right. It's going to be the other way around. That's right. You're going to go to the king and say, "I believe in what you believe in, and I believe in where you're taking us, and so I want to align with you, and I want to follow you. And so I think that's really important in that passage.
Sure.
So then we go on to verse 39 where Jesus said, so then, like you said before, he says, what are you seeking? And they said to him, Rabbi, where are you staying? So Jesus replies in 39, he says to them, come and you will see. And it's interesting, that word see there actually means understanding. So Jesus is saying, well, come and you'll understand better. I will show you what I mean by that.
One of the dumb jokes my dad always said was, he would say, I see, said the blind man, after he stepped on a rake and saw. And I'm sorry, you know I had to throw at least one dad joke in there. But that concept of, oh, I see, oh, I get it now, oh, I understand. This is one of my favorite verses in the Bible, because he's saying, come on, come and try me out. Come and ask your questions. Come and bring your doubts. Come and bring your skepticism. Come and spend the day with me. Come and see, and you will know who I am and what I'm about. And then you can make your decision about whether to follow me.
Right. So what did they do? Continuing in verse 39, so they came and saw where he was staying. And they stayed with him that day, for it was about the 10th hour. And then in verse 40, it says, one of the two who heard John speak, John the Baptist speak, and followed Jesus was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. Verse 41, he first found his own brother Simon and said to him, we have found the Messiah, which means Christ. And he brought him to Jesus, and Jesus looked at him and said, you are Simon, the son of John. You shall be called Cephas. I knew I wasn't going to get that right. Cephas, which means Peter, and Peter means rock. So one of the things, a couple things in those couple of passages that I noted. One was Andrew accepted John the Baptist's testimony about Jesus and immediately went to tell his brother. There was no question in Andrew's mind that Jesus was the Messiah that they had been praying for. And so I guess my question to you is, who in your life needs to hear who Jesus really is?
Yeah.
Not what others think, but who he really is. So ask yourself that question. And then the second part of what I noticed there was Jesus not only saw Peter for who he really was in that moment, but who he was going to become, right? And so by giving him a new name, right, Peter, it signified a new character and a new rebirth. And the same is true for us. When we give our lives to Jesus, we're reborn. He renames us.
There's a place in Revelation where he says he writes a new name for us on the stone.
Right.
That's exciting to know that he's not thinking of us as who we came to him as. He's thinking of us as who he's going to make us to be. And that's going to be so much greater and so much better than what we could have been on our own.
So not only do we have, how I see this is, not only do we have an earthly name that our mothers have given us, we also have a name given to us by Jesus. And how cool is that? To know that the God of the universe who made everything, and we are so finite, that he gave us our own spiritual name is pretty cool.
And for you Bible scholars, you probably know this, some of you don't. Cephas is Aramaic for rock or stone, and Peter is Greek for rock or stone. So when Jesus said Cephas instead of Peter, he was speaking in Aramaic, and that was probably a more intimate kind of communication. And so he was saying, Peter, I see you. I see who you are, who you're going to be. I see all the flaws. You're going to do some crazy things, and you're going to make a lot of mistakes. But I see you, and I know that at the end of all of this, you're going to be a rock.
Yeah, and he prophesied over him. He really did in that moment. So then we go down to verse 43. The next day, after all of this has happened, the next day Jesus decided to go to Galilee. I don't think he decided. I think he already knew.
I think there was some prayer involved.
Yeah, I think that, decided to go to Galilee, and he found Philip and said to him, follow me. Okay? So what we're seeing in this first part of John is where Jesus, is calling his apostles to him, to follow him. And so he's just showing us that path. So he comes upon Philip, and he says, follow me. And in 44, now Philip was from Bethesda.
In the English Standard Version, the reason it's we hear Bethesda, that's usually it, but it's called Bethsaida in this particular version.
The city of Andrew and Peter. That's why he's with me.
That's
He's
right.
a scholar. Andrew and Peter. And Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him of whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." And Nathanael said to him, his response was, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" And Philip said to him, "Come and see." So, just a little history there. Nazareth was despised by the Jews, okay, because of the Roman military presence that was there. So Nathanael was surprised that Jesus, who's supposed to be, who Philip is saying is the Messiah, came from there. Fortunately, though, he followed Philip anyways.
And I tell you, I think that, I imagine just this wry grin on Philip's face as he uses almost exactly the same words that Jesus did. Mm-hmm. Come on and you'll understand. Come on
and see.
You know, and so he doesn't have the power of that. He doesn't, where Jesus said, "Come and see," he had the power to show. All Philip has is the power to invite, and Jesus is the one who's going to do the showing.
Right.
So I just imagine this wry grin on Philip's face as he says, "Well, you know what? Come and see."
The other thing, too, that I think really stuck out to me, or we've talked about in this passage, is that, you know, because the Jews really despised Nazarenes, people from Nazareth, you know, if he had stuck to his prejudice without investigating it further,
Yeah,
right,
that's good.
he would have missed the Messiah, right? He would have said, well, you know, he's a Nazarene. What good is he? Nothing good comes from there. Why would I want to believe this?
Right.
And so he had this idea of, in his head, this prejudice in his head right off the bat. And so I guess my point is, don't let people stereotypes about Jesus cause you to miss out on his love for you, and his power for you. You know, come and find out who he really is from the ones who eyewitnessed him and the ones who were with him for years. Those were the men and women who followed him, and they saw everything that he did. And you know, if I'm gonna understand a person or a people, I want to spend time with them, not go by the stereotypes of what I've been told.
And think about how often you've gotten in trouble. I can say this as if I'm talking straight to you, because I know you've experienced this with me. You heard something about somebody and you supposed it was true, and then you met them and you thought, that doesn't sound like that person at all.
Right.
So just be careful with that if people have been telling you about Jesus and you have an opinion about him right now, no matter what that opinion is, recognize that there's probably more that you need to learn about who Jesus is, no matter where you are in your process.
And we're still learning that too, and I think that's a key point too.
Yeah.
So Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him, and this is in verse 47. Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him and said of him, "Behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom there is no deceit." So a little bit of salty Jesus going on there.
We need to introduce salty Jesus. We think that sometimes the words don't actually portray the emotion that Jesus is feeling right then. And sometimes we just suppose he's this great cosmic figure who's always looking off into the distance and has this serious side. I actually think he's a little tongue-in-cheek here. Mm-hmm. I think he's going, hell, look who doesn't have anything wrong with him. And I think that's important for us to see that human side of Jesus where he can joke with us and tease us a little bit about who we are.
Well, and then in the New Living Translation, it says, as they approached Jesus, Jesus said, he said, "Now, here is a genuine son of Israel, a man of complete integrity." Yeah. So Jesus knew how he felt about him.
Yeah.
And he still said, "You may see me this way, but I see you this way."
That's right.
You know, and I think that's huge. And I think the big thing is, you know, God knows the real you, whether that's not so great or whether you think it is, whatever. He sees the real you and the heart of you. And here's the thing, he still wants you to follow him. You know, Jesus saw the heart of Nathanael. He saw the heart of Philip. He saw the heart of Peter, right? And he knew who these men were, and he still said, "I want you to follow me." even though I know who you are.
I met with one of the pastors here in Ardmore, and we were talking and just about what it meant to be called and how we both feel unworthy for that. And he said, my favorite Facebook saying is that when Jesus called you, he had already factored in you're stupid. Like he already knows that you're going to mess up, you're going to do things crazy, you're going to make bad decisions, you're going to be selfish sometimes. He knows all of that, and he still wants to love you that way, and that's why I love Jesus.
Right. So he said in 48, Nathanael said to him, "How do you know me?" You don't know me, right? It's basically what he's saying. And Jesus answered him, "Before Philip called you, you were under the fig tree, and I saw you." Nathanael answered him, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Like, basically, how did you know that? Nobody knew that I was under that fig tree. You weren't even around, right? And so in that moment, it was an aha moment, right? He realized, wow, this guy's
there's something
genuine.
to this guy.
Yeah, he's real. You really are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel in that moment. And Jesus answered him, "Because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree. Do you believe? You will see greater things than these," right? And so he's basically telling him, now that you have believed in me, right?
Opened your eyes.
And opened your eyes, now I'm going to give you even more.
Yeah.
Be prepared. Be ready.
That's right.
And in 51, and he said to him, "Truly, truly, I say to you, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man." And we know further on at the end of this story that that is really the truth. So I guess I want to challenge for today our not yets. Those of you who are watching and have made it all the way to the end here, if you have, awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
If you've made it here for my not yets, those are on the fence or don't believe at all, okay? God knows the real you, and he still wants you to follow him. And the other thing I want to point out is his friendship with Philip helped him come to realize who Jesus was.
Nathaniel's?
Yes, Nathaniel's friend, yes. And so who in your life can you ask the real questions, right? If you know somebody who you think is a pretty strong believer that you hang out with, or a coworker, whatever the case may be, a neighbor, whatever, family member, friend, somebody you think fully gets who Jesus is or knows a little bit more than you do, I encourage you to ask them. Ask the questions. Find out who he really is. Don't go by the stereotypes of this world and what everybody else is saying he is. Ask them the real questions, the hard questions. And if you don't have anyone in your life to do that with, then come join us on Sundays. It's completely informal. We're going to do some teaching, but also some questions and some reflection and just kind of figuring out who he is, and we encourage you to come and find out.
We want you to participate in it, not just come and watch and see.
Ask us.
So we think this is what Jesus did. When he said come and see, he didn't mean come to my house, I'm going to stand up on a stage and behind a pulpit and tell you all the stuff that you need to know. What he meant was come and see. Let's spend time together and let's ruminate together. Let's learn together. Let's ask each other questions.
Let's ask the hard questions, you know.
And that's how we want to function at the jar. That's what we want you to experience when you come.
That's right. And then for our alreadys?
Well, I tell you, a couple of things. And one of the things that I didn't have my notes, but I wanted to just point out. Notice how often it talks about seeing. Jesus asks, what are you seeking? Then he says, come and see. Philip tells Nathanael about it, and then he says, come and see. And whenever he has to prove to Philip, or to Nathanael who he is, he says, before Philip called you, I saw you. And because I said to you, I saw you, you believe, you're going to see even greater things than this. And then at the very end, he says, truly I say to you, you will see heaven opened. And in that concept, he's saying, look at what you're going to know. Look at what you're going to understand. And that's just amazing to me. So there's a passage in Scripture that talks about opening the eyes of our hearts. Paul asks God to open the eyes of our hearts, that we would have understanding, a spiritual understanding. And so for your alreadys, one of the first thing you can do is begin to pray. God, help me to see what it is you want me to see. And spend some time in quiet before him. That's the first thing. The second thing is that notice in this passage the calling is different for everyone. Andrew and the other disciple believe in John the Baptist, and so they're willing to check Jesus out because of that, and Jesus receives that. Peter was invited by his brother and went willingly. Jesus actually called Philip to follow. He didn't come from John the Baptist. He came straight from Jesus. And Nathanael was also invited by his brother, but he came with all kinds of doubt and skepticism. And so I just want to encourage you, how you were called to Christ is not going to be the same as everyone else is called to Christ. And so as you're asking God to open the eyes of your heart, ask him to also help you see that the people in your life who need to know who Christ is are not necessarily going to experience him the same way that you do. So ask him to help you figure out how to do that.
Well, can I tag on to that real quick?
Sure.
So you notice there are like 4 names given to Jesus in this passage.
Mm-hmm.
Rabbi, Son of God, King of Israel, right? So these disciples, these apostles are starting to notice who Jesus is, right? The Christ. They're seeing him. They know. But the thing is, it takes them 3 more years.
Yes, that's right.
To really fully understand who he is. And even then beyond that, after he dies and rises again. So I think for us already believers, just recognize that we may have known Jesus our whole lives, right? But that doesn't mean we will never fully know him completely. Like there's so much more that we can learn and that we can continue to dig deeper into his word and find out.
For those of you who are keeping count, the 4th name is Son of Man that he tells them, and that's exciting. So this is what I want you to know about Jesus, so that you can become who he's called you to be. He is big enough to answer you no matter how you're seeking, and he's not afraid of your doubt and your skepticism. As a matter of fact, he is willing to share his life with you so that you may know him better. And that's what we want for you. And that's why we created the jar. We want you to come and be filled by him, not just with knowledge, but with understanding and with wisdom and with grace and with love and patience and kindness and goodness and all of those things. But so that you can empty that out onto all of the people in your life. Because the mission of God is to bring the kingdom of heaven here so that we can experience it from the moment that we recognize who Jesus is.
That's right. So we hope to see you next week for our free barbecue.
Oh, yeah. The meet and greet.
The meet and greet at 4 o'clock next, right here at the community center.
Yes. Give you a chance to meet us personally and decide whether or not you want to be a part of what we're doing.
Ask us some questions.
Absolutely. Come and see.
All up in our business.
Come and see.
Ask us and find out. We're going to give you free barbecue. We've got a bouncy house. We've got games. We've got door prizes, drawings, I should say. So come and check us out next week right here, Sunday, 4 o'clock at the Wilson Center for that. And then the following week, then we will continue our study in John.
That's right.
And breaking that down and just looking at who this Jesus really is and what we believe and why we believe it.
That's right. Thank you so much.